Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the country. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of over there? Because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They say this all the time. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly, truly special. And I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And so without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of The Herd, with Colin Cowherd, talking about the 49ers win and Brock Purdy. And, Colin has had some pretty strong feelings about Purdy. So I'm really curious to see what he has to say with regards to this. I mean, that game was so exciting, so fun. Really kind of no matter who you're rooting for, honestly. But especially if you're just more of like a casual fan, or if you don't really have any, any dog in the fight, you're not a Detroit fan or a 49ers fan. It was just an exciting game. A lot was going on. It was exciting. It was just a fun game overall. So I'm really curious to see what Colin has to say about this. We heard what he had to say earlier about specifically from Detroit's angle, but not specifically about the 49ers and Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy really showed a lot in this game. I really, really do. Truthfully, I think, and I haven't heard anyone say this yet, I think Brock Purdy proved to be a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson, honestly. I mean, you can trust him more than Lamar Jackson. I think technically, theoretically, Lamar Jackson's ceiling is higher, but what good is a high ceiling if you can't be trusted or if you're inconsistent? And the thing about Brock Purdy is he was shown to, be significantly more trustworthy and dependable and more mature than Lamar Jackson. Brock Purdy did not start off well. He hasn't started off well in multiple games recently, and yet it doesn't get to him. Lamar Jackson, he's slamming his helmet, carrying on, slamming his hand on the ground, just lacking that emotional maturity. And you see Brock Purdy, by contrast, showing immense maturity, even when things aren't going his way. And I think that really speaks volumes. And not to mention, I think he may have scrambled for more yards than Lamar Jackson on Sunday. I'm not sure. I didn't look at the exact numbers, but definitely had, he definitely played a better game without a doubt. So I'm curious to see how how Colin unpacks this.
31-34, Detroit 31. I've said all year about Brock Purdy. We have to contextualize it. It's a great place to land as a quarterback. Kyle Shanahan, the best left tackle in forever, the best running back in football, the second best tight end, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. It's a great place to land. You could land in Carolina, or you could land with a terrible coach. Brock Purdy landed in the perfect spot. But it should be noted, so did Trey Lance, and he couldn't get it done. So Brock Purdy deserves credit. There's two things that jumped out to me. First of all, that first half looked like the game was over. San Francisco never panicked down 24-10. They just kept feeding Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. They never lost their identity, Baltimore. They had a really flat first half. Not going to be able to do that against Kansas City, but they overcame it. And number two is Kyle Shanahan's always wanted his quarterback to move a little. It's why they drafted Trey Lance. It's why he got frustrated with Jimmy Garoppolo. And then they found Brock Purdy, who could move and was accurate. And that mobility, that movement, plus Shanahan's schemes, once it gets rolling downhill, is tough to stop. Brock Purdy lacks a power arm. He's not real big. God, we saw drizzly weather give him fits a week ago. But that mobility was a factor. Shanahan's schemes, always a factor. Those weapons, insane, all-time good. And Brock Purdy's ability to come from behind is no small feat. Now, 5 of his 8 playoff quarters, be honest, he's been outplayed by Goff and Jordan Love badly. But he has shown an ability to shake off a bad half or a bad pass or a bad drive. He doesn't sulk and he doesn't melt. And that's a real thing.
Well, so again, that's what I kind of said at the top. To me, that is the biggest thing that stands out to me than anything. And I think it was kind of so perfectly compared to, because we saw Lamar Jackson meltdown. A lot of people want to, kind of point to the Chiefs defense of why that happened to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and that's part of it, but that's hardly the whole picture. Okay, the Chiefs defense isn't just this most amazing defense that we've ever seen, that they can just make the MVP just nothing, right? That's not true. Not to mention that game plan was just awful. The running backs rushed 6 times. So they had 6 carries that entire game. Compare that to the Chiefs, who rushed the ball 32 times. Okay, that's one is a very smart offensive head coach, Andy Reid. The other is not so much. But anyway, I digress. The real point is that Brock Purdy didn't let the moment get to him, even when things started off rocky. Right, that first half was not positive for him. He had some missed throws. He wasn't. They were down big. The Detroit Lions were in complete control of that game, thus putting a lot more weight on Brock Purdy's shoulders. And you can see all the conversations that Purdy kept having with Shanahan, and it was often, a lot of times, the broadcast showed it to us. It was after Purdy did something wrong, right? It was after Purdy failed in that moment. And that is such the benefit of having such an amazing elite head coach like Shanahan, is you get to go there and Shanahan is able to, guide him with his golden hand and be like, listen, this is what we need to do. This is what you need to look for. These are the mistakes you're making. And that is just invaluable. I mean, it's really immeasurable, honestly. It's hard to ever see how important that is when you're with that coach. And it's easier to see when other good quarterbacks don't have that. Because you pay the repercussions for not having that. Patrick Mahomes has greatly benefited from that. Brock Purdy has greatly benefited from that. And then you have other quarterbacks who have not been able to have that luxury. Matthew Stafford has, from Sean McVay, even Goff, for that matter, with Sean McVay, and Baker Mayfield with Sean McVay for a very short, limited time. Shane Steichen with Justin Herbert. Shane Steichen with Jalen Hurts, all of those things. But at the same time, a coach can only get you so far, right? Coaches typically can't. The way I look at it is that coaches can bring out the best and help someone reach their potential. And this is what I always say, and this is what one of the best coaches I had was, would always say, my job as a coach is to put you in a position to succeed. And it's really true. And again, that's something that Andy Reid does better than, everyone. He's second to no one in that. But again, just because you have an amazing coach doesn't mean that an average quarterback can now become a great quarterback. They put you in a position to succeed, and they put you in a position to maximize your potential. So, and this is kind of what Colin kind of also gently brought up with Trey Lance, is that, no matter how good Shanahan is and no matter how good those weapons are, you can only get so much out of Trey Lance. And granted, we didn't really get to see Trey Lance, completely, unfortunately, because of things like injuries and stuff like that. And then Brock Purdy obviously caught fire, so you were never going to go back to Trey Lance. But we saw Garoppolo, and we saw a lot of success with Garoppolo. You absolutely did with Garoppolo. But then once he got away from Shanahan and those weapons, he really sputtered. He wasn't able to stand alone. And Brock Purdy has obviously proven to be better than, both those quarterbacks, and better than many quarterbacks, quite honestly. And again, that to me, that is really this match made in heaven of Shanahan being able to put Brock Purdy in a position to succeed. And then also Brock Purdy's just raw talent and abilities, whether it's his physical abilities, his mental capabilities, any of that, however you really want to define it. Brock Purdy had some really amazing, awesome throws and some great moments, scrambling, which I always said, I don't know why that doesn't happen more, where you have quarterbacks that aren't known to be mobile and then the field completely opens up. And especially in a playoff game, do or die, it's like, this is the perfect opportunity to be like, I'm good enough to run 10, 15 yards, which ends up being, backbreaking. There was certain times that were opening up that like you or I would be able to rip off for a 10, 15 yard run because they're not respecting the mobility in that regard. And I think a part of that is just the fact that Brock Purdy, can get kind of typecasted as, a smaller white quarterback, right? So you're just like, he's a small white dude, he can't run on us, right? It's just different. And a lot of people talked about Trey Lance, that Brock Purdy is more athletic than Trey Lance. And so again, I think we also have kind of this stereotyping thing where we have like a, young, athletic looking black quarterback and we're like, oh, well, this guy's going to be able to run and move and do this. And it's like, well, I don't know. This white guy seems to be doing a little bit better. And they said they brought that up in the past about, Cooper Kupp and even Christian McCaffrey and stuff like that, where you think like, oh, Cooper Kupp, he's this white guy. He's not going to be a good receiver. He's not as fast as, some of these other people or can run as good as routes as like a AJ Brown or, whichever wide receiver you want to use. And, it's pretty funny to hear them talk about it. I think Marcellus Wiley brought that up before. I don't remember exactly though. And so I just wonder if you also get kind of, kind of that, stereotyping with someone like a Brock Purdy, where you're just like, he can't move. He's old, he's slow. He's just like a slow white dude, whatever. But again, I mean, I think Brock Purdy really showed up and showed resilience. And to me, I look for that in that's one of the most important things to me is the resilience. And that was always my biggest question mark with Lamar Jackson. Colin has pointed out in the past that he loves that Lamar gets mad at himself, and he's always mad at himself, and he doesn't yell at other people, which I agree. That's probably the second best thing. But if in the middle of the game you're yelling at yourself or you're carrying on and you're emotional, that's just not the recipe for success. And that is something that has separated Patrick Mahomes, Manning, God, of course, I'm drawing blanks on every single person. Brady, any of these quarterbacks that have obviously succeeded to such high degrees that they don't let the moment get to the best of them. It's not to say that they don't get emotional, right? We all have seen all of the videos of Tom Brady smashing the tablet and stuff like that. But again, it's a different experience, especially because you can smash the tablet and then say, let's go, and then get back out on the field and compete. And again, we've only seen so many quarterbacks in the NFL right now be able to show that resilience. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to win the Super Bowl. You just need to prove to have that resilience. And until you prove it, we can't say you have it. And so Patrick Mahomes has it. Joe Burrow has it. Josh Allen has it. Jalen Hurts has it. Matthew Stafford has it. And Brock Purdy has it. And I'm trying to think, there's probably a couple other quarterbacks. I mean, I guess technically Trevor Lawrence, right, being down so big and throwing like a million interceptions and coming back in the playoffs. Although, like, I would give him like halfway there, because that was like his first playoff game, and I feel like it was kind of like a happy to be there, playing with house money type of situation, so the stakes aren't as high, right? To me, you have to really kind of do it in a higher stake game. Not necessarily just the first round, or you have to do it multiple times, right? You can't just do it one time in like maybe like a lower stake game where people aren't really expecting you to 100% succeed in the first place, which I think the other quarterbacks that I've mentioned have obviously clearly have proven to either do it at like the highest levels, at Super Bowl, NFC Championship game, or they've done it repeatedly in repeated games, no matter how low or high the stakes are. And so Purdy has proven that. And I think that's a really, really, really important. And Lamar Jackson's awful game, and there's just no other way to put it, awful game has really highlighted that. And then again, this also highlights the brilliance of Shanahan, because they had actual offensive game plan to work off of, to actually utilize and do. And again, to put Brock Purdy in a position to succeed, and Christian McCaffrey to succeed, and Kittle and everyone else to succeed. And you compare that to what the Ravens did in their game plan, and it was just atrocious. It was just a bad game plan. The Ravens are a power running team, and they were leading the league in rushing and everything, and instead they rushed the ball 16 times. And 10 of those were just kind of more like scrambles from and I don't know if I have these numbers exactly correctly, so sorry if I'm a little off, but majority of those weren't even handoffs. They were Lamar Jackson runs. And so again, you compare that to an elite head coach like Andy Reid, and Andy Reid is he has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, and he's handing the ball off 32 times. And again, because I think a couple of those rushes were, runs from Patrick Mahomes too. So I think it was probably maybe like 25 or higher or whatever within. But my point is significantly higher, right? Significantly higher, and using that. And that wasn't even necessarily what the Chiefs did best, right? Especially relative to what the Ravens could do. So the game plan and coaching and being able to adapt also within the game is so crucial. And to me, that's what these offensive head coaches continuously prove. Andy Reid, Shanahan, McVay, that's what they show. And you have to just be really excited for Purdy and happy for him. Again, he seems like an awesome person, someone who you want to root for, and someone who you want to see succeed. Except for, I guess, if you're just not a 49ers fan, then, but this game to me really showed a lot. I still think he's the question mark going into the Super Bowl. To me, that really is the only question mark going into the Super Bowl, is how will Brock Purdy play, because he's been uneven. He just has. He's been resilient. He's proven his resilience, but he's been uneven in all the games he's played in the playoffs so far. He's made some really unbelievable, amazing throws and amazing moments, but then he's also had some really, really bad ones. That game could have gone very bad, could have gone very differently for Brock Purdy and the 49ers. That, a chunk of his yards, like 50 plus yards, went to that fluke thing where it hits the wide receivers, where it hits the defender's helmet and bounces into the hands of, I think it was Ayuk, right? And, that is such a fluke, a freak accident. That ball easily could have been intercepted, or at the very least, it would have just hit the ground. And then again, so if that's intercepted, that changes the game completely, and it now wipe away 50 yards from Brock Purdy, add another interception and bring down his rating. And now, it's nowhere, his game doesn't look anywhere near as nice, as good. And in fact, you would point and say Brock Purdy lost that game. But the fact that they got that bounce, it really kind of changes everything. So, but again, I think just showing that resilience is to me the biggest takeaway for Brock Purdy more than anything. And going into the Super Bowl is really going to be interesting, because the last time the Chiefs played the 49ers, it was a different game, different teams, different players in their primes. The Chiefs had a better offense at that time, I would say. You have in Travis Kelce, who's in his true prime. And you'd have Tyreek Hill was in that Super Bowl, right, if memory serves me correctly. And then you had the 49ers, who had technically a weaker offense, because they didn't have Christian McCaffrey, and they did have a lesser quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, but their defense was better. And now this season, the 49ers offense is better, but their defense is technically not as good as the Super Bowl season. So it's a really interesting matchup. And so again, to me, what it's going to come down to is can the defense contain Patrick Mahomes at all, which is obviously not going to be easy one bit, as well as can you get more consistency out of Brock Purdy? Because I don't know if you'll be fortunate enough to right. I don't know if you'll have the ability to come back down. What was the score? 24-10, down against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, right? No matter how good Brock Purdy is, I just don't know if you're going to be able to do that, because the Chiefs are better than the Lions, right? And Andy Reid would kick that field goal and go up 3 scores, right? That is the difference between a really highly intelligent, experienced coach versus not. But again, the other benefit is for these games too, is that the 49ers are veterans. They're seasoned vets at this point. And Brock Purdy has done a lot of growth, and Brock Purdy has now played in multiple big games and has succeeded. So I think in this game, he's going to feel better going into the Super Bowl than he did going into this NFC Championship game. I really stand by him not feeling too good going into this game, and it kind of showed. He did not play good, did not play start, and then he kind of played into the game and got significantly better as the game went on. But I think after this game, he'll definitely feel better going into the Super Bowl and he knows he's going up against a really tough defense, and Shanahan is going to highlight that as well. And the difference is that Shanahan will most likely be able to develop true game plans against someone like the Kansas City Chiefs, stuff like that. He has the experience. Shanahan has made the mistakes. Brock Purdy has made the mistakes, and so they can learn and grow. And again, you're surrounded by seasoned vets that can now, that the moment won't get too big for them. Detroit Lions, the moment got too big for them. You started having drop passes. Ben Johnson he's an amazing OC and great, and was tearing it up in the first half. And really, I think kind of Dan Campbell kind of let him out to dry in that regard. But I think that's not what you're going to get with this 49ers versus the Chiefs game. You're getting two offensive head coach juggernauts, and you're getting two sets of seasoned veterans on both teams, really. And then there's just, really the question mark really kind of comes down to Purdy, as well as will the Chiefs offense. It's like, are they gonna have slippery hands? Are they gonna drop balls? That has obviously been a problem for the Chiefs. And so will that be a problem? Obviously, the Super Bowl is going to be under like perfect weather conditions. It's indoors, so there's going to be no issues with rain, right? Because that was also the thing, Purdy with rain. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm excited to talk about it for the next couple of weeks and unpack it more. But as of right now, I really just have a coin flip. I really have no idea, and that's why the spread is pretty much like a coin flip. There's just no way you could predict, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. But anyway, what do you all think? How do you think Brock Purdy played? How do you think the 49ers played as a whole? Who do you got in the Super Bowl? Would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community, and I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.